Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Pop Screen, the Geek Show podcast that looks at the good, the bad, and the mythical of movies either starring by or about pop stars. No, the podcast covers a broad range of musical and cinematic genres, from country and western to hip-hop, from documentaries to whatever the hell this is. I'm your host, Graham Williamson, a writer for the Geek Show and a video artist and short filmmaker, and I've been joined this week by
Mark Cunliffe, who is also a writer for the Geek Show. I also appear on, let me think, We Are Cult, Z Network, Horrified. I have a chapter in Scarred for Life Volume 2, and you can find me on Letterboxd.
You can, yes. And you said before we started you've got your Letterboxd review for this up, which I was glad you said that, because I watched this over a week ago, which is not normally a problem. You know, I wasn't worried about it. It's not as if we're suddenly going to review the most forgettable film in pop screen history or anything like that, is it?
I watched a little bit of it earlier on in the week and half of it this morning.
Right, that's good. Yeah, I was going to say if there is a more forgettable film, I have aptly forgotten it. So I guess whatever that is takes the crown.
I guess it would do. But we're talking about the 1961 film What a Whopper, which qualifies for the pop screen because it stars Adam Faith.
Indeed, who we've covered before, haven't we? In Stardust.
Oh yes, he's in Stardust. That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
I almost forgot about that. Yeah, he had a. It's very hard to sort of describe Adam Faith to people today, but I mean, he was huge. He was. I think he was the first British artist to get his consecutive singles to number one. I think. All of his first few singles. Actually, let's have a look on Wikipedia, because rather than me just try and make it up as I go along.
Although that could be fun.
It could be. I could tell you that he invented
drum and bass. That's his thing.
Drum and bass, yeah. Connect 4, all those sort of things. He scored consecutive number one hits on the UK singles chart with What Do You Want in 1959. What do you want if you don't want money? And Poor Me. In 1960, he became the first UK artist to lodge his initial 7 hits in the top 5 and was ultimately one of the most charted acts of the 1960s. He was also one of the first UK acts to record original songs regularly. Yeah. So and he branched out into movies fairly quickly, really.
Yes, because I'd also seen Beat Girl, which is a very
Beat Girl,
film. Yeah. But that was released on BFI Flipside.
I mean, yes, I've got that one as well. Yeah. He'd become a much better actor than what he is here and in Beat Girl, definitely. I mean, I'm a big fan of Budgie, the early 70s Cockney Chancer type program, which he's very good in that. And then he sort of just nothing but acting after that, really, I think, because then he's in Stardust, which he was nominated for Best Newcomer at BAFTA for Stardust, I think, or Best Supporting Actor, I can't remember now, one of those.
It can't surely be Best Newcomer, because that was like 74 or something.
Yeah, but I mean, would we call him a newcomer to acting? Imagine we wouldn't call him a newcomer to acting, would we? Yeah.
No, I know awards bodies are not always. They haven't always got their finger on the pulse, but that's an extreme example.
They're not always finger on the pulse, no.
Yeah. So
That
this is
reminds me of Dave Johns, Daniel Blake, when he got nominated for Best Newcomer. Oh, we're jumping.
Yes.
Are we a bit out of loop?
We're a bit out of sync, yeah. So
I
just
think we're a little bit out of loop, aren't we? You join me live via satellite in 1984 to Dallas. It's like an episode of Wogan, isn't it? You could be Wogan, I'll be Larry Hagman.
That's good, yeah, because I definitely feel confident about my ability to do the accent. I think that'll get us no backlash whatsoever.
It's got to be better than Adam Faith's occasional drop into the Scottish accent in this film.
Oh my God, yes. Did that inspire the Scottish nationalist movement? Because I can't imagine them putting up with it.
But I do just want to very quickly get into an anecdote about Best Newcomers from Dave Johns and Daniel Blake. He said he got nominated or he won an award for Best Newcomer, and when he came home, there was the NHS poo sample thing waiting for him because he turned 60 or something. That brings you crashing back down to earth, doesn't it? But yeah, Faith. I'm guessing Faith was Best Supporting Actor then for Stardust, which he. I think what happened was he'd done 2 series of Budgie. Then he was involved in a sort of Dylan-esque road accidents, like when Dylan had the motorbike accident and disappeared for like a year, said he'd never do anything again, then came back. Faith was like, well, I've had this car accident, I can't act anymore, so he never did. He disappeared for a year. Then he was in Stardust, and it was like the start of his career all over again.
I mean, if he thought he couldn't act because he'd been in a car accident, imagine how he'd have felt watching What a Whopper for the first time.
Yeah, he's not. He's very. I've seen some reviews on Letterboxd describe him as raw.
One way of putting it.
Yeah, like raw as in like a frozen chicken. I mean, we're being unfair. He like I say, he did become a much better actor. I don't think he's any different to a lot of pop stars who went into acting in the early 60s. I mean, I wouldn't put a sheet of Bronco between him or Cliff Richard.
Yeah, you're not. People at this point weren't going into it for the craft, right?
No, that's true. But the one thing I like about this is that I think both him and Cliff, and they were like the two big sort of like British rock and roll stars, really, weren't they? They both had films out this year in 1961. So you've got Cliff in The Young Ones, which is a typical "Why don't we do the show right here? Let's save the youth club" type musical. And then you've got Adam Faith, who is in a film about trying to fake the Loch Ness Monster. I mean, that just shows you how quirky a person, how unusual his choices were, I think.
Points for ambition, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, he later became a very serious businessman and financial advisor. So even back then, apparently people, as you know, from the BFI flip side, I think they interview, was it Gillian
Hills?
Hills, that's it. They interview her on the BFI flip side, and she said, like, even from that early age, Adam Faith, he'd had a few hits behind him, but he was already looking at, like, how do I make this work for me in terms of money? And, I had an eye on the business side of it rather than. So I think he's an interesting person in terms of what he wants to do, what he chooses to do. And this is just batshit crazy project, really.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about his careful business nous, but it's hard to really fit What a Whopper into that framework.
Well, apparently he was Michael Winner's financial advisor at one point, and Michael Winner attributes the fact that he lost a shitload of money to Adam Faith. So
Yes.
perhaps he wasn't the best in terms of business.
I can sort of see this as being an interesting business decision because the Loch Ness Monster is one of British culture's great untapped screen stars. Really, I'm always
Yeah.
surprised that there aren't more films about the Loch Ness Monster because it's our national monster in the same way that
Yeah.
America has Bigfoot, Japan has Godzilla, France has Gerard Depardieu. You know,
What's the point of having a big nose if you can't shove a banana up it? But yeah, it is. No, that's true. That I hadn't thought of it like that. But yeah, there aren't many Loch Ness Monster films out there, are there?
not all, no.
And there could be some serious ones. I mean, this is not a serious one. This is sort of third-rate carry-on stroke Ealing comedy.
It's not a serious one by any means, although there are bits in it that I suspect are better researched than it's letting on. You know, there's that whole bit where they try and fake the monster's footprints with like big fake feet attached to one of them. Now, that could just be a sort of Route One idea for how to fake a monster. Or
He's got a book. He's got 14 times. Of
I've
course he
got
fucking
14
has.
times.
Of course he has. This podcast is brought to you by 14 times.
Hey, if this is conforming to type, wait until a bit later on when we start talking about Doctor Who. But yes, here is a section from Ulrich Megan's article, Nessie at 90. Then the now famous Daily Mail fiasco happened. In December, the paper sent the famous big game hunter Marmaduke Wetherell.
Brilliant
name. Yeah.
Brilliant.
To Loch Ness. He interviewed witnesses, sailed on the loch, and finally, after a long week, discovered proof of the monster's existence, footprints of the creature on the banks of the loch. Loch Ness Monster is a fact, not a legend, said the Mail, and newspapers all over the world followed suit. 1 month later, the British Museum in London declared that an investigation of the footprints had shown they were all of the right hind foot of a hippopotamus and had been made with an umbrella stand. So yeah, Daily Mail lying to its readers for 90 years.
Of course, yeah. I think we should probably try and do a brief précis of this plot, actually, because people are probably listening to this thinking, right, Adam Faith, Loch Ness Monster, what the fuck's going on here? But it's basically he. Oh God, why have I set myself up to do this? He's basically a failed. What am I doing? He's basically a failed novelist, and we know this because in the title sequence, two dolly birds on Chelsea Embankment, I think, say, "How's the book going, Tony?" And he goes, "It's just to the public. Fine, thanks. It's just to the publishers." And that is like the basic, Well, no, there's two wonderful introductions in this film, and they're all in the title sequence. The first is that bit, so we know that he's a writer.
Yeah.
The second is the fact that they put a woman's arse in the opening shot,
yes.
and then proceed to have "What a Whopper" just written round it.
Yeah, wrapped round the arse, and that was so interesting to me because it's not quite a moment where you can say you couldn't do that now. I can imagine a film starting like that now, but the film would be about sex. There are a lot of like very innocent youth certificate films from the 1960s that now seem weirdly horny because they assume that everyone is straight and the only interaction between men and women must be dating. What else is a woman for? So yeah, that is quite weird. Yeah,
it's weird. It really is weird because it does set up to be a sort of. Although the carry-ons were in their infancy and they were quite. They weren't risque, like they weren't smutty like the 70s, were they? This is like the era of Carry On Sergeant and stuff like that. So it was quite almost Ealing-esque, really. So to get this shot in a film, you're like, oh, okay. You do expect a kind of, carry on camping type film, don't you? But
You
it's
expect the opening shot for film to have something to do with what follows, I think, is like the root of the issue here.
but
Yes.
they've clearly just gone, right, we need some tits and arse in this film at some point. This girl's got quite a big bum, let's call it What a Whopper, and just have it wrapped round it. And fucking hell. But yeah, he's a novelist who has written a book about the Loch Ness Monster, only to find that there isn't much interest in the Loch Ness Monster. So him and his bohemian friends, shall we say,
Yeah.
decide to travel up to Loch Ness and fake some Loch Ness sightings in the hope that it will encourage interest in the phenomenon and finally get his book published. Now, it's not a bad conceit for a film,
No.
but the writer of this film, Terry Nation, of Doctor Who fame, just completely
Yes.
forgets that conceit after about 20 minutes, and it's just a stream of really shit dad jokes and
Yeah.
postcard jokes, isn't it, for like ages? And then they suddenly go, oh yeah, there's this thing about the Loch Ness we're supposed to be doing, isn't it? The Loch Ness Monster, quick, let's put that back in it again. And then before you
Yeah.
know it, the film's over.
It's like dad jokes and cameos, and it's like you should always be wary of a comedy that has loads of cameos because it's made by people who aren't funny. It's made by people who think, oh shit, we don't have any jokes. Let's just put as many funny people as we
Yeah.
can sign
Yeah.
in. Because you look at the
The
cast
magic,
of this.
the magic Christian.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
good
All of
example.
those 60s all-star comedies are like that, aren't they?
Yeah, that's so true.
Candy, Skidoo.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Candy. Yeah.
Absolute shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever Terry Nation's strengths and talents are, of which there are many, as a very interesting, drama writer of fantasy and science fiction, comedy is not his thing. Even though he was really dedicated to try and be a comedy writer for a
Yeah.
huge number of years, writing for Hancock and what have you, comedy really isn't his thing at all, is it?
No, and you assume it must be because, like a lot of Doctor Who fans, my only real sort of knowledge of Terry Nation's early career is that show guides and biographies will say he started off writing for Tony Hancock, and you think, hey, he must have been shit hot. And then you see The Feast of Stephen, and you realise his comedy style is, can everyone just shout a bit more?
Yeah, it is really. Oh, it's so on the nose, isn't it? But I love the fact that you go, he must have been shit hot. It's like, imagine if you're reading that in a book, and he must have been shit, and you turn the page looking for hot, and it isn't there. It's this kind of. That would be a better summary. He must have been shit. Oh, there's no hot. No, he really was shit, wasn't he? Yeah.
He was. I mean, like you look at the cast list for this outside of the central cast. You've got Sid James, Spike Milligan, Wilfred Bramble, Charles Hawtrey, Clive Dunn. You think they must be able to wring a laugh out of this shit, and yet mostly they can't.
They really can't. I counted. There are 10 actors in this film who went on to star in Carry On films.
Oh.
Some of them more regular than others, obviously, and others who would just do like one Carry On film as jobbing sort of comedy actors. But that's a big pedigree. Well, either it's a big pedigree or it shows you just where the British film industry was in the 60s and 70s. That was the only sort of game in town, really.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, there's serious Carry On regulars, like as you say. There's Sid James, there's Charles Hawtrey, there's Terry Scott, there's Lance Percival. That's 4 straight off the bounce there. There might even be a couple of other regulars, I'm not sure. But there are a few that have just done like one film as well. But they're Terence Longdon, who was quite an early sort of leading man of Carry On films.
Oh, okay.
He is Adam Faith's friend in it, the one who's going out with Carol Leslie's Charlie.
Right, yes. Yeah, maybe part of the reason why I wasn't laughing much at this was that I was also looking up the cast history for for this podcast. And Cabell Leslie's life
Carol
story is
Leslie,
just the
yeah.
most depressing fucking thing you've ever read
It's
in your
so
life.
tragic because she was
Yeah.
such a beautiful woman
Mm,
and very, very talented. I mean, this is a thankless role for her,
yeah.
just to play the ditzy blonde bimbo who
Yeah.
is just utterly brain dead, really, isn't it? But she puts so much charm in it that is,
Mm,
it does, like you say, Terry Nation's humour is crap. There's nothing on paper here. It's
yeah.
what the actors can do. Now, some actors do really well with what they're given, and she's one of
Yeah.
them. Other actors are just doing the little bits of shtick really out there, and it feels
Yeah.
really crowbarred in, and it's not. It's not working. I say I don't see what point Spike Milligan was in this for at all.
No. I was shocked at how unfunny the Spike Milligan cameo is. And I say that as someone who's been a lifelong fan of Spike Milligan. I think in terms of the star cameos, Wilfred Bramble probably like gets the most juice out of it. He's pretty good in
Yeah,
it.
I mean, even Sid James has had a loss in this. I mean, he's
Mm.
badly cast as a landlord, a pub landlord in on B&B, whatever, in Loch Ness, considering he's not fucking Scottish. You know?
And he can't sound like anyone other than Sid James,
Sid
which is
James,
an
yeah.
impossibility.
I mean, it's true, but even he's reduced to just doing the laugh
Yeah,
over and over again to sort of fill the cracks in the screenplay. I mean, that laugh is always when you, even in the most dire of Carry On films, you hear that laugh and you can't help but smile.
yeah,
But it's sign of a man struggling with material here that he just keeps bringing it out, and it's funny once you hear it. You think, yeah, 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 but when you hear it after everything he says,
yes.
you know he's on a hiding to nothing at this point.
You resent it because it reminds you of so many other things that Sid James was actually well cast in, and then you think, oh well, it's like the new Ghostbusters films, isn't it? I don't want to see something where the only amusement I can get out of it is it being parasitic
Mhm.
towards all the things that I've
Yeah,
enjoyed.
yeah. No, I completely agree. Um, yeah, I mean, I have this thing that Sid James is. I have this line that the Carry On films ruined him really because I think he was such an interesting character actor in really
Mm,
good stuff, and then to see, well, I think the Carry On films ruined a lot of people, really, didn't they? But to see
yeah,
him sort of just talk his words in like really increasingly threadbare 70s smut as
yes,
just playing this, habitual dirty old man, but we lecherous in a not like a sleazy dirty old man, but this sort of lovable, lecherous dirty old man, as if that's
yeah,
such a thing. It just when you think that he was in like Lavender Hill Mob and stuff like that, it's
yeah,
it's really
yeah,
sad. It's I find it really sad. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
But like you
And
say, not as sad as the poor fate of Carol Leslie, who
no,
sadly this was a penultimate film, I think.
penultimate film, yes,
Yeah.
never really recovered from Associated cancelling her contract.
Yeah.
She was in that kind of 50s and 60s blonde arms race in British cinema, wasn't she? Where
Yeah. Yeah.
every company had to be trying to find the British Marilyn Monroe. And
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
nearest we got was Diana Dawes, who is someone I think is like massively interesting in her own way, a really significant figure, but is not Marilyn Monroe.
No, that's
Um,
true. That's true. That's true. I mean, yeah, you throw those names out there. It's like Diana Dawes, Sabrina,
mm,
um, Carol Leslie, but Carol Leslie sort of faded. Well, Sabrina's definitely faded into oblivion, but Carol Leslie's sort of slipped away into obscurity as well. And the fact that her demise is so tragic, they just committed suicide at 39, I think it was.
yeah, it
It's
was. Yeah.
just it's horrible. But I can't understand it. I mean, I don't get why. Well, I can because who's to say your confidence is knocked by a film company saying we don't want you anymore. But you think, well, go into television or something like that. there must have been opportunities, but it's just she must have just been so knocked off her axis that it just never worked for her.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can't downplay sort of mental health as a factor in what
Exactly.
happened to her, but
Exactly.
it's also like the idea of pop and popular culture has less of an elevated status at this point than it later would. Like Adam Faith deciding on the set of Beat Girl that he wants to go into business, very clever move, because at that time people would have said the odds on anyone giving a shit about rock and roll music in 20, 30 years are perilously low. That
That's
was
it.
what
Yeah.
was believed.
That's it. It's diversifying is key in this sort of this era, isn't it? Or in
Yeah.
anything, but this particular era, the smart money was on. Try and diversify your talents. I mean, Elvis did it, didn't he?
Yeah.
Tom Parker was very clever enough to say, "We've got to get you in films because who knows when this bubble will burst."
Yeah, and Diana Dawes too. Diana Dawes' genius is that once her career faded and she started to be attached to scandals that ruined her career as a sort of A-list mainstream movie star, she knew how to play the kind of celebrity that she'd been dealt by that.
Yeah.
She was like very ahead of her time. And people from our era that we know who've survived scandals and come out shining from, like George Michael, say, are really following the sort of Diana Dawes template. But it must be harder when you're someone like Carol Leslie and your downfall isn't because you were part of a major scandal or you appeared in a terrible flop. It's just because the production company just seemed to have stopped being interested.
Yeah, and all your dreams are just shattered straight away.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
awful. And like you say, if you're not mentally strong enough to deal with that, it's terrible. But I'd love to have a sort of, I know we're talking about Terry Nation, but I'd love to have a sort of time machine and say, no, just go into television. It'll be fine.
Yeah,
Just move into something adjacent to this, and you might, who knows? The film companies might come back after a while, but
yeah.
not to be, unfortunately.
Well, while we're on Terry Nation, there is one other thing that I thought is quite uncanny. It can't possibly be an inspiration because we're like 2 years off Doctor Who launching, 2 years off Terry Nation coming into it. But the sound artist that Tony, the Adam Faith character, lives with is very much sort of male Delia Derbyshire, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the Terence Longdon character, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is true. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that actually. Yeah. So you get these wonderful sort
Yeah.
of sound effects, don't you?
And there's also all the stuff about like the I can't remember what it is, but there's some stories about him, disturbing the household with all these terrifying noises, and it did remind me of that bit in, was it Caroline Katz who did Delia Derbyshire? The
Yes,
Midsummer
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that amazing story in there where people were so afraid of like the newness of the sounds she produced that when her like nonagenarian cancer survivor upstairs neighbor not unexpectedly died one day, people thought, oh, he can't survive the sounds that,
It's these
that
new
she's
sounds
blasting
from
through the
space.
curtains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it? There's,
It's
I mean,
wild.
there's a nice setup in this film, isn't there? That sort of boho house of like, there's a novelist,
Yes.
there's a sound engineer, did
There's
we
a
touch
model.
on? There's a
Carol
model.
Leslie's character's a model.
There's
Yeah.
Charles Hawtrey camping it up. I can't remember what Charles Hawtrey was supposed to be. It's just Charles Hawtrey.
Yes. Yeah.
And then there's Lloyd Record, who we've spoken of on this podcast before, I think, haven't we?
We have.
Who, Yeah, because he was in the last podcast we did
He was
together.
in The Lunatic, yes.
The Lunatic, yeah, that's right. And you reminded me after we wrapped recording The Lunatic that he's in this, and I just couldn't remember. And the only reason I couldn't remember is because it's not a very big part, is it?
Yeah, he's
And
barely in it.
you forget that sort of opening, which is really quite interesting,
Yeah.
it's just dispensed with. It's like, it's such a weird film, this. It's like so many different things just sort of like tacked on together.
Yeah.
And I would like to spend more time in that little house with like these weird tenants in it than
Absolutely, because now it looks like an experiment in sort of Thomas More style utopian fiction, where you've got this house in London that is inhabited by extremely unsuccessful avant-garde artists, and they can somehow all afford the rent.
yeah. But who wouldn't want to watch a film like that on its,
Yeah.
forget all the forget Freddie Frinton doing his drunk act for the 9,000th time. I'm sorry, I know to our German cousins, why you watch Dinner for One every year on New Year's Eve, I don't know, because honestly, I'm from the Northwest. We were tired of that shit in about 1960. But yeah, he gets to do his drunk act an awful lot, doesn't he?
He does, yeah.
Repeatedly, ad nauseum. Yeah.
There's a lot of sort of comedy drunk stuff in it, and I don't know, am I being oversensitive, or is this happening because this is what British film producers in the early 60s thought all Scottish people were like? Because I can't remember seeing a British comedy, even Whiskey Galore isn't as pissed up as this.
No, that is true. But also, you got this is a film where the minute they cross the border into Scotland, they hear bagpipes.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, there's no sign. They just know they're in Scotland because they're hearing bagpipes. So fucking weird, isn't it?
I wanted them to do a world sort of round Britain tour then, and they work out they're in Ireland when they hear the fiddle, and they work out they're in Wales when their cottage gets set on fire.
And they work out they're in Cornwall when the Airbnb prices are astronomical.
They work out they're in Cornwall when they hear Aphex Twin.
It's just they work out they're in Cornwall and they realise there's no Cornish people there anymore. It's just a load of Londoners in their second homes.
We're getting quite close to pitching a Mark Jenkin remake of What a Whopper, and I've just in the unlikely case that he is listening to it, do it, Mark, do it, do it.
I'll play the Charles Hawtrey part.
If we're miscasting to that extent, I'll be Sid James.
You can be Sid James. I'll do the Charles Hawtrey part. I don't know who you'd get for Adam Faith now. You don't really seem to get sort of.
I feel like a couple of more flops and Harry Styles could be within our grasp.
That's a thought, actually. Yeah, that is a thought. Yeah, that is true. Oh, Matty Healy's not doing it, is he? Now he's been dumped by Taylor Swift. That's got to be an option for him, isn't it?
That would be like. It would be very hard for Matty Healy to enter Loch Ness undetected without the sort of massive trail of grease being visible through satellite images.
Plus, also, Matty Healy is at pains to tell you what a bad boy he is. I doubt he'd do this sort of cheery, innocent film, really, would he?
No.
He's fucking in a car, shooting heroin. It's not gonna happen, is it?
Matty Higley is an example of one of the 21st century's most baffling phenomenon, which is an internationally successful rock star who wants to be a podcaster. Matty, it's shit. I should know. But that's it, isn't it? He wants to be like an edgy New York podcaster who gets to say slurs, and if you object, he can say that actually I voted for Bernie, so it's okay. That's his dream life. And you think, you're literally a rock star. What are you doing?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
dated the biggest pop star in the world for like 18 minutes or something. And your dream is to be on Red Scare. What the fuck is wrong with you?
So he's not going to be in it.
No, he's not going to be. It's- Apologies to anyone who's listening to this podcast for some deep discussion about Adam Faith's recorded career, and they've got music that I think is not their demographic.
I mean, the
being
weird thing
discussed
about this film as well is that as I've just reeled off his Wikipedia there, Adam Faith was a really big, successful British rock and roll star, pop star.
Yeah.
There's no hint of that in this film. There's two songs. The
Mm.
first is What a Whopper, which plays over the beginning credits and the end credits, which goes, "Ooh, what a whopper."
It's very much the arse theme, isn't it, of the opening credits? Yes.
You got a good crapper. It's just that. And then there's another one that plays when he's sort of making eyes at his French girlfriend in the bedroom at the guest house run by Sid James. And that's the only time I ever sort of laughed, because there's a real sort of meta knowing thing in that scene, isn't there? That she puts the radio on and he's like, "Oh, not this nit." And the guys, it's obviously him, but the radio announcer calls him Ian Charity instead of Adam Faith.
That's good. That's got kind of a good Fist of Fun vibe to it, hasn't
it really
it?
has, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I thought, oh well, there you go, Terry. You've made me sort of smile at least at that point, you know. Although why didn't go for Alan Charity rather than, you know, consider his name's Adam Faith, Alan Charity,
I'm just
rather
glad
Ian
that
Charity.
It's got Ian Charity. It's got
just for the Fist of Fun.
Ian Gunpowder kind of
Ian Cress of the Cress Marketing Board. Just £5 a punnet. Cress isn't a stress on my wallet. But yeah, that's the only bit I liked. And then there's that weird sort of thing where he starts singing to the radio, singing to him, serenading with himself, basically.
Yeah.
To woo this French girl.
But
at the same time slacking the guy off, which is slacking himself off. It's very weirdly meta.
It's very messy, isn't it? If it was like a pop star with a more tormented image, you would be able to do a deep psychological dive on that, wouldn't you? On him insulting himself as a part of a duet. Yeah. If this started Kurt Cobain, is what I'm saying, then
what a Whopper starring Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, we can all imagine it. Don't pretend you can't.
The Foo Fighters did that dreadful shit comedy horror movie recently, so you know it's not beyond the realms of fantasy, is it?
Yeah.
The other great inspiration thing on this film is again the Terry Nation Doctor Who line, is that some of the shitty attempts at convincing the Loch Ness Monster is real by these things do look like Doctor Who monsters from the 60s, don't they?
Yeah, not least in the very final scene of the film, which I desperately want to talk about. Listeners, if for any reason you are sensitive about spoilers for a movie that's over 60 years old,
look away now.
Yes, because it's not a surprising plot development, I guess. It's sort of one of about 2 or 3 endings that something like this can possibly come to. But as they get out into the loch, they meet your actual Loch Ness Monster.
Your actual Loch Ness Monster. That's what they meet, isn't it? Your actual Loch Ness Monster, who looks like I don't know if listeners with a long memory might remember the Chewits adverts in the 80s. Like Godzilla from the Chewits adverts.
Yes. Yeah.
Sort of comes out the sea, winks to camera, and goes, "What a whopper!"
And at that moment, listeners, I was so close to adding an extra star to my letterboxd rating for
Yeah,
this.
it's worth it. Yeah.
They kept us waiting, but finally it delivers something that is so dumb it becomes transcendent.
It would have got an extra star on top of that if it then reached down and ate Adam Faith and his girlfriend in that rowing boat. That suddenly became a weird sort of, Godzilla movie.
Yes.
Tramp steps out the Loch Ness, stands on Wilfred Bramble. Sid James does that thing and then gets stood on as well.
Its atomic breath neutralizes Temmie Scott. God, what a better world we'd be in if that had happened.
Oh dear. It's only thwarted by Charlie getting a tits out. It's a thing. Oh dear. It's a strange film. It really is.
Yeah.
I still don't know who the audience is for this film.
No, it's odd, isn't it? Because, as you say, it doesn't exploit Adam Faith's then astonishing success, which is a remarkable thing for the
if you
artist in this
turned up
position.
wanting to see your favourite singer in a film in which he gets to act, win the girl, do a few jokes and sing, you're missing at least the last two there, because do a few jokes doesn't work in this film. It's not funny. Sing, no, you hear it at the beginning, the end, and somewhere in the last third, and that is it.
Like, there are a lot of pop movies from this kind of 50s, early 60s, kind of pre-Beatles either, that are not good. They are obviously the result of producers who don't understand the appeal of this music yet, but I can't think of many that are worse at exploiting like the basic pleasures of rock and roll music.
Yeah, it's so inept, it's so cack-handed. And then it's obviously, like you say, it's obviously from a script by a shit, not hot, just a shit comedy writer who wants to sort of pitch it like an Ealing comedy, but he's just not funny enough to do that. And there's no charm really in the script or in the direction. The director's a guy called Gilbert Gunn, who apparently started out as a documentary filmmaker in the war, and then has
and then he moved on to less funny material.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He just seems to just do B movies in the 60s, like, shite like this, and they came from beyond the sun or something, one of those really stupid sort of Plan 9 type sci-fi things that would just star like Warren Mitchell or somebody like
that. Alf Garnett sitting there telling the aliens to go back where they came from.
It's another film we could pitch.
Yes.
But yeah, strange. But like you say, it's chock full of people. But surprisingly, again, people with long memory needs to this, or people who watch, subscribe to BBC Archive on social media. Fife Robertson pops up as the reporter. So he's playing himself there. Now, he was quite a big deal in the sort of like BBC News type of thing at the time.
This was around the time that people started doing that, wasn't it? I guess it was around the time that television was an established enough presence that you could muck about with stuff like that. Like, I always think of, again, a Doctor Who reference, that bit in the War Machines where they've got an actual BBC newsreader. I can't remember who it is, but he's like full frame going, London is being attacked by killer robots. And you think, Jesus Christ, if you've changed the channel at this moment, there is literally nothing to tell you that this is a drama.
I'm thinking it was I don't know. I might be wrong. I think it was Kenneth Kendall. I'm not sure.
Yes,
Who
it
later
was.
did Treasure Hunt later, didn't he? Yeah.
Yes.
It's bad when you think of that, isn't it? But yeah,
Yeah.
there's some sort of weird little crossover, isn't there? It's like, and here's the man that you watch on at tea time for the news.
Yeah.
He's popped up. So
It
James is going to mistake you for Cliff Mitchell Moore, and that's a little gag that won't mean anything to da kids these days.
Nope.
Not that da kids would be watching What a Whopper, I think, but, you know.
Oh, although you never know. It could be big on TikTok. Stranger things have happened on TikTok than yeah.
There could be a weird revival for Adam Faith. You don't know.
There could be. There could
Who
be
knows?
kids doing the What a Whopper challenge where you have to mimic Nessie in the final scene.
Oh, you just have to. You just have to try and mimic the Loch Ness Monster. Just the feat that you're telling me about.
Yeah. You could have a TikTok challenge where people have to imitate Clive Dunn at the beginning and just go from room to room of their house going, what's going on here then? That could be a good one.
That was another completely dead avenue of comic relief, wasn't it? You get Clive Dunn doing his usual. I mean, if Freddie Prinze's doing his drunk shtick, which we all know, Clive Dunn's doing his old man shtick. Clive Dunn was about 30 at the time, so he's played 78 as per usual. It just always seems to. It always surprised me when it's like when they do like these Dad's Army retrospects in the 90s, and Clive Dunn would be there like, how's he still alive?
Yeah. But it's just one of those classic cases of mid-20th century aging rates just being massively accelerated.
Because even without makeup, even with, I mean, he had like brown hair, but he looked fucking shagged out anyway.
Yeah. I feel like I already know the answer to this is going to be no, but do you have anything else you want to say about What a Whopper?
I want to say that I long since thought that the only person who remembered this film was Stuart McConey, because Stuart McConey mentions that it was always like a sort of weekday afternoon film when he was off sick from school. You watch Crown Court with a bottle of Lucasade and a hot water bottle, and then What a Whopper would turn up, and you're like, oh, bloody hell, this film again. And it's so disappeared from memory, really. But it's suddenly, Talking Pictures obviously is. Reinvigorated it of late, I guess.
Yeah, I guess
they do seem to be doing that for Adam Faith. Like I say, Budgie is
Yeah.
on a Saturday evening at the moment, which I would recommend anybody who is interested in Adam Faith. That Budgie is a particularly good series, and some of his other films do sometimes pop up on Talking Pictures, like Beat Girl, the aforementioned Beat Girl, Mix Me a Person pops up sometimes, and also he's in a film with Peter Sellers, Never Let Me Go, is it, or Never Let Go?
Never Let Me Go with Adam Faith is just making me think of the Kazuo Ishiguro novel.
Oh God, yeah. It might be Never Let Go then. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Where I think it's the only properly straight drama performance from Peter Sellers, where he plays a vicious car thief. Well, he gets people to steal cars. One of them being Adam Faith, like a little Fagin gang, but he's like this vicious mobster who deals in ringed cars. Yeah, but they're his early films, and they do sometimes pop up on Talking Pictures, but he's not a great actor at that point in time.
No, I don't think so. I think I had to look back over my review of Beat Girl for the Geek Show, and I am actually quite kind about him, largely because I think he's more plausible as a sort of teenage rebel than a lot of the more drama school-y people in the rest of the cast. But
he's genuinely working class, wasn't he? Which helped, I think.
Yeah,
and he's got a genuinely sort of. I mean, he was a handsome guy. He's got a genuinely sort of dangerously handsome look about him at times, which doesn't work in this film at all.
No,
But
no,
he's a
he's not
short
meant to
ass
be
as well. He
dangerous.
was tiny, wasn't he? He's a really small guy, which again sort of throws you. But yeah, I mean, he's brilliant in Stardust. He definitely
Yeah.
earned that nomination at BAFTA, definitely. And then he's in McVicker, which is he's really good in McVicker as the guy who tries to break out of prison with Roger Daltrey but doesn't make it over the wall. He's really good in that. And then I think the 90s he did Love Hurts with Zoe Wanamaker.
Was that a TV series
It's a
or a
TV
film?
series by Lawrence Marks and Maurice Gran. It was a kind
Right.
of he was a sort of self-made billionaire, and she was a charity worker, I think.
Right.
And they did so. It was an interesting time that because they did these weird. It was, I think it ran for about 3 series, and it was very sort of they just sort of drop everything and film in Africa in like these
Yeah.
deprived areas, and you're like, it's weird. It's like one week you're in London, the next week they're in Africa. Back when television felt global, when it felt like you could do that. And
This is
now,
like a 90s hauntology, isn't it? When you're looking back at an era when the BBC had money to do stuff.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, don't get me wrong, the BBC do sort of film abroad, but it's usually like they might go to South Africa now and just film an alien planet on Doctor Who, whereas they'd go to a quarry in the
Yeah.
70s, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they to actually film in a place and have a message about that place just feels weird now. I mean, I
Yeah.
imagine people like, the Richard Tices and Farages of this world would be calling it lefty propaganda, but there we go.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
I
and
think
also, before I finish, never forget Adam Faith's famous last words. Bless him, he died in a hotel room, or he had a massive heart attack in a hotel room with a considerably younger woman. I think she was in her 20s. He'd been married for years.
Yeah.
He had a very bad heart attack, a bypass in the 80s. But he was this guy who would never settle,
Calm down. Yeah.
never settle. He was always moving, sort of thing. He always thinking of the next thing he could maybe make a book on, I guess. But yeah, apparently, although his wife says that he wasn't physically able to have sex in the last years of his life. He was only 62 when he died, but obviously the bypass had a big issue there. He must have still liked the company of women enough to be having, relations with other women behind his wife's back. It was this woman in her 20s. But yeah, apparently she says that his last words were, Channel 5 is just a load of shit, isn't it? Which, I mean, he wasn't wrong, was he?
You want to go out with a statement of truth, something that says something timeless. And Channel 5 is a load of shit, and it's always been a load of shit since it launched. So
imagine that's the last thing he ever saw, some shit on Channel 5. It's like, Channel 5's just a load of shit, isn't it? And then collapsed. It's just this. Bless him.
It's beautiful. Yeah, we can't top that.
No.
So, Mark, just remind people where they can find you.
You can find me at The Geek Show. You can find me sometimes dwelling on this podcast or some of the actors or directors on Cut podcasts. I'm on We Are Cult, Horrified, Z Network, and Letterboxd. I think that's my stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I am also on The Geek Show, and I can be found on Letterboxd. Just search for Graham Williamson, and I'm also on Instagram at Graham W Films.
Well, to get me, well, I've not got my Instagram back, but I do have a new Instagram.
Yeah, your current Instagram, yes.
Yeah. So you can find me on there as well.
Yeah. But yes, we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with more Pop Screen. But until then, I've been Graham.
And I've been Mark. And remember, the truth is out there.